Hello, I'm Nadia Jani and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Putin rejects Western security in Ukraine, warning troops would be a target. The Israeli military says it controls 40% of Gaza City and plans to expand operations in the coming days. And the UN warns of overlapping crisis in Afghanistan after powerful earthquake. Russian President Vladimir Putin has dismissed Western plans for Ukraine's security, cautioning that any foreign soldiers sent into the country would be viewed as lawful targets for attack. Here's more.
At the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok, Russian President Vladimir Putin has rejected Western security proposals for Ukraine, warning that any foreign troops deployed there would be treated as legitimate targets by Russia's military.
Regarding potential foreign military contingents in Ukraine, it is one of the root causes behind drawing Ukraine into NATO. Therefore, if some troops appear there, especially now during military operations, we proceed from the fact that these will be legitimate targets for destruction.
His warning followed a Paris summit of the Coalition of the Willing, where 26 nations pledged to provide troops once a ceasefire takes hold. The reassurance mission, led by France and the UK, is designed to strengthen Ukraine's security and stabilize the country in the event of a peace deal. But the Kremlin is dismissing it. Putin claims foreign forces would block peace, while his spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, branded the Paris plan definitely not acceptable, saying NATO or allied troops near Russia's border would be seen as a threat. The Paris summit, hosted by Emmanuel Macron with Volodymyr Zelensky in attendance, underlined Europe's push to act independently. Zelensky welcomed the decision as the first concrete step towards real security guarantees. Macron stressed the mission would not fight Russia, but prevent any fresh assault on Ukraine. The United States, however, has yet to define its role. US President Donald Trump has ruled out putting troops on the ground, but suggested air support could be possible. Despite recent contacts between Trump and Putin, talks with Ukraine have stalled. Putin insists he has an open dialogue with Trump and says he is ready to host a summit in Moscow. For Kyiv, the stakes remain high. Ukrainian officials point to Moscow's repeated breaches of past agreements and say only binding Western protection can prevent another cycle of attacks.
Staying with the conflict, President Donald Trump said he plans to speak soon with Russia's President Vladimir Putin, adding that their past dialogues have been good. The remarks came after a call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Speaking at a White House dinner with tech leaders, Trump described the Russia-Ukraine war as tougher than he expected, but remains determined to help bring this conflict to an end.
I will be. We're having a very good dialogue. I settled 7 wars. The one that I thought would be maybe one of the easiest. You know that feeling? You think one thing is going to be easier, turns out to be a little bit tougher. But the one that I thought would be an easier one because of my relationship with President Putin and with Ukraine and everything else, I thought it would be the Russia-Ukraine disaster, where this week 7,014 people were killed. Soldiers, in most cases soldiers, a few from Kiev, relatively few, but mostly soldiers, and they're being killed.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met European Council President Antonio Costa in Uzhhorod on Friday. In a written statement on social media, Zelensky said they discussed Ukraine's EU accession process and sanctions policies, among other topics. He added that today's negotiations focused on Ukraine's participation in European initiatives, particularly the Security Action for Europe initiative, as well as progress towards EU membership. According to the media, Zelensky is due to meet Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico later to discuss energy issues.
Hello, my friend.
British Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has resigned days after admitting to underpaying tax on a property in southern England. In a letter to UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, she said that she was stepping down as Britain's Deputy Prime Minister, Housing Minister, as well as the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. Rayner acknowledged on Wednesday she had underpaid property tax owed when she bought an apartment in the southern English seaside of Hove. Moving to the Middle East, where Israel says it now controls about 40% of Gaza City as it prepares to expand operation in the coming days. Thousands of residents are refusing to leave while international concern continues to mount. Israeli forces are advancing through the outskirts of Gaza City, moving closer to the center. Health officials in Gaza say at least 53 Palestinians were killed on Thursday, most of them in the city. The operation began on the 10th of August with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowing to defeat Hamas. Let's now take a look at Israeli protesters who are calling for the release of the hostages. They are marking the 700th day of the war in Gaza with demonstrations across the country as the Israeli military intensifies its offensive in Gaza City. Blake Sifton reports from Tel Aviv for A News.
Hostage protests are being held across Israel today to mark the 700th day since the October 7th attacks and the beginning of the war in Gaza. The family members of the hostages held in Gaza and their supporters want the Israeli government to reach a ceasefire, to bring their loved ones home, and to end the war. They are very upset that the Israeli government has still not responded to a ceasefire proposal that's on the table and that Hamas has agreed to, that would see the release of roughly half of the Israeli hostages held in Gaza as an interim first step. Also today, Hamas released a video showing 2 of the hostages held in Gaza, and that proof of life video is further piling pressure on the Israeli government to do more to win their release. The day of protest started today with protesters unveiling a very large SOS sign next to an hourglass at Hostage Square here in central Tel Aviv. They said that symbolized that time is running out for the hostages. Protests were then held in front of the homes of government ministers and Israeli President Herzog, and tomorrow more protests, a very large protest, is expected to be held outside the home of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem. These protests have really ratcheted up in the last few weeks after the Israeli government announced plans to seize and occupy all of Gaza City. The family members of the hostages have called that planned offensive a death sentence for their loved ones because they are very concerned that as Israeli forces push into new areas, Hamas may execute the hostages rather than letting them be rescued, or they could accidentally be killed by Israeli forces. We've seen both of those things happen throughout the 23 months of this war. Meanwhile, that offensive to seize and occupy Gaza City is ramping up. Today, Friday, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said that the gates of hell were opening in Gaza City, and shortly after, Israeli jets bombed and destroyed a 12-story apartment building in the western part of Gaza City. That comes after weeks of intensification of Israeli military operations on the outskirts of Gaza City in neighborhoods like Zaytun and Sabra. We've seen widespread aerial bombardment, widespread shelling from tanks and artillery, and satellite imagery shows that large swaths of these neighborhoods have now been completely flattened, completely reduced to rubble. Blake Sifton for A News in Tel Aviv.
Afghanistan has been hit once again by a powerful earthquake in Dar-e-Noor. The United Nations Development Programme says communities there are suffering devastating losses of lives and homes, calling it one of the country's worst overlapping human and natural crises.
A 5.4 magnitude earthquake devastated Dar-e-Noor district in southeastern Afghanistan today, the 4th tremor in the area since Sunday, according to the German Research Center for Geosciences. Afghanistan has been hit by a string of quakes since 31st August, leaving more than 2,200 dead, over 3,600 injured, and tens of thousands homeless, leaving behind massive destruction and heavy human and material losses. On top of that, the the UN Development Programme has warned that the country is now facing several overlapping crises. Thousands of homes have collapsed, while survivors struggle to find food, shelter and medicine as global aid funds run low droughts worsen the crisis.
UNDP will come back here with early recovery, and we will try to restore the normal way of life here as much as it's possible under these circumstances. There's an acute need for new shelters, reconstruction of the buildings.
With refugees continuing to return from neighbouring countries, pressure on already scarce resources is growing, leaving many Afghans with little hope as they face the latest disaster.
Billions of people around the world are still breathing polluted air with devastating health consequences. But a new report from the UN's Weather Agency highlights not just the dangers of climate-driven wildfires, but also some positive signs with emissions falling in parts of the world.
Billions of people around the globe continue to breathe toxic air, pollution that kills more than 4.5 million people every year. At the launch of the World Meteorological Organization's latest Air Quality and Climate Bulletin in Geneva, scientists warned that pollution knows no borders.
Air quality respects no boundaries. And the smoke and the pollution that issues from the wildfires in this record-breaking season in the Iberian Peninsula has been detected over Western Europe already. So the effects are not only limited to the Iberian Peninsula, but can travel basically throughout the rest of the European continent.
The data shows wildfire smoke spreading across continents with dangerous fine particles known as PM2.5 visible over South America, Canada, Siberia and Central Africa. Scientists warn that as climate change drives longer, more intense fire seasons, air quality is set to worsen.
We know that the wildfire season has the tendency to be stronger and longer every year as a result of climate change.
But there is some good news. For the first time, the World Meteorological Organization has seen a marked year-on-year reduction in emissions in parts of the world.
And we also see that there is a reduction in emissions in certain parts of the world, particularly Eastern China and Europe, year on year.
Eastern China is a case in point. Cities like Shanghai have expanded green spaces, planted trees, and shifted to electric transport, steps that are beginning to pay off. Still, the overall picture remains grim. Few cities worldwide meet the UN Health Agency's air quality standards, and while pollutants like sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide are declining, ground-level ozone, the main ingredient of smog, is still on the rise. Scientists stress that climate change and air quality must be tackled together, and the message from Geneva is clear. Progress is possible, but without faster action, billions will continue to pay the price of dirty air.
Now we'll take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Azerbaijan has called Russia's latest development on the Azerbaijan Airlines plane crash both surprising and misleading. Officials stressed that insurance payments to Azel and its passengers by a Russian company were made months ago, strictly under the airline's insurance contract. They said it cannot be matched with the compensation demanded from the Russian government for the downing of the aircraft. Baku also dismissed Moscow's claim that the arrest of 13 Russian citizens in July caused tensions. It says bilateral relations deteriorated after the crash itself, the conduct of Russian officials and incidents of persecution against Azerbaijanis in Russia. Now, US lawmakers are voicing concern over Georgia's deepening ties with Russia and China, warning it could undermine the country's democratic path and its partnership with the West. The Helsinki Commission is set to hold a hearing next week titled From Partner to Problem, Georgia's Anti-American Detour. Our correspondent has more on the story.
Georgia's growing engagement with Russia and China has drawn attention in Washington, where lawmakers are questioning the country's direction in its relations with Western partners. The U.S. Helsinki Commission has scheduled a hearing for September 10 titled From Partner to Problem, Georgia's Anti-American Deterror. The announcement notes concerns about the state of democratic institutions in Georgia, the treatment of opposition figures and protesters, and the country's openness to greater Chinese involvement in strategic sectors. It also mentions disputes around trade corridors and elections. At the same time, official cooperation between Georgia and the United States continues. In recent days, U.S. Ambassador at Large Alan Purcell introduced 2 new senior defense officials to Georgian Defense Minister Irakli Chikovani, highlighting ongoing military collaboration. This creates a notable contrast. While defense ties remain in place, policymakers in Washington are preparing to discuss how Georgia's internal and external policies may affect its partnership with the United States. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
In Turkey, the 4th Turkey-Azerbaijan Energy Forum in Izmir concluded with agreements to boost cooperation in hydrocarbons, renewable energy and mining. Our correspondent Aliya Aziz has more.
Turkey and Azerbaijan have taken another step forward in their deepening energy partnership. The 4th Azerbaijan-Turkey Energy Forum concluded today in Izmir, bringing together Azerbaijan's Energy Minister Perviz Shahbazov, Turkey's Energy and Natural Resources Minister Alparslan Bayraktar, and COP29 President Mukhtar Babayev, who participated in the forum, underscoring its global significance. The two sides signed a protocol aimed at strengthening cooperation across multiple areas, including hydrocarbons and petrochemicals, renewable energy, electricity markets, energy efficiency, regulation, and mining. 6 joint working groups presented their progress reports and laid out plans for future collaboration, highlighting joint efforts to align traditional energy projects with investments in clean and renewable technologies. Minister Alparslan Bayraktar stated that the forum sets a new roadmap for cooperation in both traditional and renewable energy, strengthening partnership for years to come.
We have very ambitious goals, particularly regarding turning Azerbaijan's renewable energy potential in the Caspian and in Nakhchivan into production, and then ensuring access to major markets such as Turkey, and through Turkey to Europe. We are strengthening our bonds of friendship with energy connections through transmission lines, pipelines and natural gas lines, and truly contributing to supply security not only for both countries, but also for the wider region. We are also reinforcing these transmission lines with the quadrilateral green energy corridor established between Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey and Bulgaria.
Minister Perviz Shahbazov said the Azerbaijan-Turkey energy partnership has entered a new phase with projects like the Iğdır-Nakhchivan gas pipeline, the Shafak-Asiman project, and green energy initiatives, adding, "We are one nation, one state, and our energy cooperation reflects that unity."
Güçlü Azerbaycan-Türkiye enerji tərəfdaşlığı.
The Azerbaijan-Turkey energy partnership has entered a new stage, one that consolidates our countries as long-term partners in oil, gas and renewable energy, while strengthening our positions regionally and globally against the backdrop of shifting geopolitical realities. The commissioning of the Iğdır-Nakhchivan gas pipeline, TPAO's participation in the Shafak-Asiman project, the start of gas supplies to Syria, the establishment of green energy interconnectors, and the agreements reached on the Zangezur corridor, also known as the Trump route for international peace and prosperity, are writing a new, stronger chapter in our energy ties.
Included in the program, participants had a chance to visit Sokar's Aliağa terminal, underscoring Azerbaijan's growing role in Turkey's energy infrastructure. Both sides emphasized that the forum is not just about bilateral ties, but also about building a more integrated and resilient regional energy network. Launched in 2021 and previously held in Baku, Istanbul, and Nakhchivan, the Energy Forum reflects Turkey and Azerbaijan's shared vision of energy security, regional integration, and the transition to greener technologies, with this latest edition in Izmir highlighting how the two nations are aligning traditional energy with renewables while deepening their strategic partnership in shaping the region's energy future.
Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa has launched the Syrian Development Fund, saying it will serve as a key tool for rebuilding the country. During the fund's inauguration ceremony at Damascus Citadel in the capital, al-Sharaa said the funds would be used to rebuild what the Assad regime had destroyed. He stated that the regime had destroyed the country's economy, looted its resources, demolished homes, and displaced people to camps and refugee sites. He added that the fund will be highly transparent and will disclose all money spent on strategic projects. Minutes after the fund's launch, donations surpassed $30 million, according to local media. The ICPC 2025 World Finals concluded in Baku on Thursday with a closing ceremony. A press conference highlighted the competition's role in global innovation and Azerbaijan's contribution. Here's more.
ICPC 2025 comes to an end, a journey where the brightest minds from around the world turned code into solutions. Over the past days, teams have competed at the highest level, showcasing innovation, collaboration, and problem solving.
The 49th edition of the International Collegiate Programming Contest, hosted by ADA University, brought together more than 140 teams from over 50 countries in Baku from 31st August to 5th September. On Thursday, the competition concluded with the closing and award ceremony, preceded by a press conference where officials answered questions from the media. Speaking at the press conference, Fariz Ismailzadeh, the vice-rector of ADA University, emphasized the broader significance of hosting the competition in Azerbaijan.
Students from leading universities in America, Europe, and Asia have come to Azerbaijan, where they are becoming acquainted with our country, learning about our culture and history. In the future, these young people will become leading figures in the IT industry and will hold key positions worldwide. Their experience of seeing Azerbaijan and recognizing its potential not only helps to promote our country, but also creates opportunities for building IT partnerships and advancing technological development.
For the future.
President of the ICPC Foundation expressed his appreciation to the host country.
I'd like to say thank you to the ICPC community here in Azerbaijan, because you see, ICPC is a global community that's bottom up, and the ICPC community in Azerbaijan effectively created itself with the same passion that others did over 2 decades ago, and some of those young stars in college make sure that the bank works. So thank you very much for that.
Meanwhile, Vusal Kalilov, the deputy chairman of the Central Bank of Azerbaijan, a partner of the ICPC World Finals, highlighted the role of ICPC alumni in advancing innovation.
As Mr. Bill Poacher mentioned, amongst a lot of founders and main drivers of top tech organizations, there are a lot of ICPC alumni. And as Central Bank have a lot of ICPC alumni, and we believe that it will help to develop financial market, and not only financial, but broadly help to digitalize the country.
The champion of the ICPC 2025 World Finals was St. Petersburg University, securing the top prize after days of intense competition.
Yeah, the contest was good. Everything turns out to be very good for us. We solved like everything we could.
The ICPC is recognised as the world's largest and most prestigious collegiate programming contest. Each year, more than 70,000 students from over 110 countries take part, representing approximately 3,500 universities. Azerbaijan has been part of the regional round since 2004, and until now was represented at the World Finals by a single team. For the first time this year, 2 Azerbaijani teams from ADA University and Baku Higher Oil School competed on the global stage.
Now, the European Union has welcomed the agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia signed in Washington on the 8th of August. In the presence of US President Donald Trump, the EU said the timely signing and ratification of the peace deal will mark a decisive step toward normalization, stability and prosperity in the South Caucasus. To discuss the implications, I'm now joined by political analyst Orhan Nabiev from Baku. Good evening, Orhan. My first question is, the EU has called the agreement a breakthrough in Armenia-Azerbaijan relations. How significant is that?
For the Turkey is seen as a gateway to prosperity, opening the way for trade and investment and closer ties with Europe. For Europe, it's not just remain a symbolic gesture, but it's being signed and ratifying without delay. So for Brussels, initiating process of the agreement, it's a big step, and for the EU, is not just about ending the disputes. It's about creating stability, predictability, and opportunities for the regional connectivity in this world where we see that everything burns, and this treatment, this agreement gives the chance for the stability in the region.
The EU stresses the importance of signing and ratifying the peace treaty quickly. What timeline do you think is realistic for this process?
So for EU, it's not as soon as possible. It's should be earlier than as soon as possible, because we live in such unstable world. So EU also has its own concerns regarding this signing of the process. It should be for the in the EU perspective in the 1 month and 2 months. So it should be as soon as possible.
And the agreement is based on mutual recognition of sovereignty and territorial integrity under the 1991 Alma-Ata Declaration. Why is this principle crucial for Azerbaijan?
It's not only crucial for Azerbaijan, it's also crucial for the international law, because since 1991, Azerbaijan and Armenia gained their independence, actually regained independence. And it means that signing in the framework of this Almaty Declaration, it means that both countries recognize their territorial integrity, and they recognize the UN Charter, and they recognize each other's territory based in the EU and Helsinki treatment of the Treaty of the 1975. So it means that both countries recognize each other's territory within the framework of international law. That is very important nowadays, when we see that our neighbor countries invite each other, and they reclaim the territorial, they have the territorial reclaims, and they can take it force. They want to take by force, and recognizing it in the framework of international law give the chance for EU that international law still works.
And are there any challenges to its full implementation on the ground?
Yes, there's a big challenges. There's a big obstacles can be created by Russia, can be created by Iran. But actually, I think that now Russia is more involved in the Ukrainian war, in their aggressive invading to Ukraine, and Iran is more occupied about Israel and the Israel potential attack. But however, if they will see that they have the free time and the free resources, they could invite politically, economically, or that creating the internal instability in these countries, in Azerbaijan and Armenia. So for EU is also important that to sign it, to ratify it, without letting these countries, without letting Iran and Russia to commit any step against this agreement.
Turning to Russia, we reported earlier about their comments that Putin made in regards to Azal and the passenger plane. How do you assess the Azerbaijani Foreign Ministry's response to Moscow's statement on insurance payments related to the Azal plane crash?
It was a very clear it was a clear declaration from the Azerbaijan's foreign ministry that Russia tried to cover the insurance compensation as a real compensation that we asked from Russia, and they seen this insurance compensation as it is. But actually, I think that this kind of the statements by Russia, by saying that we paid the compensation, it's nothing more than a rhetoric, and rhetoric disrespectful towards Azerbaijan, because Russia declared themselves as a former empire, and they look to Azerbaijan as from the Kremlin as a metropolia, as a colonizer, and they think that they should not do anything towards their former colony, their former territory, and they don't want to apologize. They want to start the investigation against who did this, and also they don't want to pay any compensation more than insurance compensation. So it's very rude and it's very arrogant from the Russia.
So beyond the, as you explained, the insurance issue, how significant are the tensions caused by the treatment of Azerbaijanis in Russia for the broader trajectory of Azerbaijan-Russia relations?
It could be worse. I don't expect that this process will be normalized soon. So Russia will use any tools against Azerbaijan, including the Azerbaijan diaspora in Russia. They will make pressure on them. They can also make pressure against their businesses. They can force Azerbaijanis to serve in the Russian army against Ukraine, as well as they want to put the Azerbaijani diaspora against the Azerbaijan state and Azerbaijan nation that fully supports Ukraine in this war. So they can use this type of tools and to create the tensions inside the Azerbaijani diaspora in Russia, and create the tensions between Azerbaijani diaspora and Azerbaijan state.
And do you think that could work, creating those types of tensions between the two nations, or do you think something else could come out of that?
I don't think that it can work, but it will create the how to say, as I said, the tensions, but it will not, because Azerbaijan state, Azerbaijan nation understands very well what is the real Russia, and this kind of steps against Azerbaijan will be understood that it's made by only Russia and for Russia and for Russian interests. So it will not work, but it will create the big tensions.
I see. If we just turn back to obviously the signing of the peace treaty between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and now the EU has, recognized that. The EU mentioned that the successful implementation could actually bring shared prosperity. What benefits might this bring to Azerbaijan, Armenia, and the South Caucasus, do you think?
To be honest, in the nutshell, I will tell it like this: sign the treaty, ratify it, do it now, and we will invest, help, and back it fast. So EU wants to invest in the region, but EU investors afraid of the further tensions between Azerbaijan and Armenia. But signing and ratifying this document will give them insurance that there will not be any tension, so their investment will be secured, and they can also invest to the roads, to the communication roads, to new pipelines, new internet optic lines, new energy electricity lines, green electricity lines through Turkey, through Georgia. So Europe wants to invest to the region, but they're afraid of the further tensions, further the skirmishes. But signing and ratifying this will give the EU some kind of the insurance, and they will secure their money.
And is there any hesitations from either side, from Azerbaijan or Armenia, as to why maybe it won't be as quick, or any challenges that they need to overcome before that happens?
The president of the Azerbaijani Republic made it clear that Armenia should make a referendum and just change their constitution, and they change the preamble in the constitution that has a territorial proclamation against Azerbaijan. And as soon as Armenia will do it, Azerbaijan will sign and ratify it. First steps like OSCE Minsk group are already dissolved. Now we overpass this step. And we're now waiting for the next step from Armenian side. And the Pashinyan said that, the Prime Minister of Armenia, Pashinyan, said that the new project of constitution almost ready, and we can wait it in the referendum maybe around the next elections in Armenia, which will be June. So I wait in the May, they will launch the referendum in Armenia. So it will be signed maybe in the spring, summer of the next year.
And finally, do you believe Armenia and Azerbaijani societies are ready to move toward reconciliation after decades of conflict?
Maybe some our international friends, they're not informed, but for centuries Azerbaijanis and Armenians live together. We are in the same region. We know that many international matrimonies happened between Azerbaijanis and Armenians. We presented in their weddings, in their funerals. They were in our weddings, in our funerals. We were neighbors. And suddenly, when the Soviet Union started to collapse, this conflict start and interrupt as a like devil's game. And we know where the roots of this conflict, and this conflict's roots are in the Moscow, in the Kremlin. However, I believe that eventually in the one decade, these nations, our nations, will live in the coexistence. And because we are very close each other, we have almost lived for the centuries in the same region. We have the close musical taste, we have the close kitchen, and the only one big difference is a religion and language. And I think that it will also will give to our region some kind of equality with being different.
Thank you so much for joining me and for your insights today. Thank you, Mr. Nabiev.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.